Welcome to the Outer Realm with MicheleDerocher and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since the very beginning. So thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you, nor would we want to. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for the contribution of his music, his voice, and his time for the intro you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to artist Steve McGinnis. He's the guy who's responsible for the logos here at the Outer Realm and beyond the Outer Realm. So check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre, but does amazing commission pieces of any type. So tonight we welcome the return of Nathaniel Gillis, dear friend Nathaniel Gillis. He's been on the show quite a few times. You may have caught his last segment on Beyond the Outer Realm. Always interesting, super knowledgeable, and a whole lot of fun. So tonight we're going to be talking about skin sigils, rituals, manifestation, and magical practices. Sounds could be a little bit deceiving, could be, it's not what you see online. There's just a whole lot of different things there, and I am just so anxious for him to delve right into that. So we are streaming on 8 different platforms tonight. Of course, Roku TV does not have a chat room. For those who are on X and Rumble, we can see your comments here on the board if you so choose to interact with the chat room. We do like to flash up the comments so you're able to, keep up with what's going on in the YouTube chat rooms. And for those who tuned in last night, thank you for the big, birthday open mic, open discussion. It was a lot of fun. Everybody had a good time, and it's always great to see you all in chat. So, hi, we're riders from Northeast Florida. Thank you for you made it tonight. This is awesome. Always happy to see you. Hello, Kathy. Hello, Sherry. Hello, Vet Girl 84. Welcome. Z-Sun. Hello. So this is great, guys. I'm so happy to see you. Sherry's in Florida tonight too. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, hello, Kurt. How are you? Hello. People are slowly starting to chime in, and it's always just so fantastic seeing you here. Melissa, I know you're listening. On Facebook. Great to see you. So, okay, I think we're good. I'm just sort of trying to figure out where everybody is because the chart is not functioning properly. So we'll see. Anyway, guys, put your seatbelts on. As always, Nathaniel's in the house. It's going to be a great show. And just, show us all your love like you always do. We're so grateful for all of you. Without further ado, Nathaniel, how are you?
I'm doing good, my friend. How are you today?
Oh, God, I'm doing outstanding. It's Thursday, and you're here.
I am here, believe it or not. And I'm glad to be here. I always enjoy my time with you.
Yeah.
And
Karen, hello. She's another one of our hosts here on the network. I'm glad she's going to be listening to us tonight. Well, I'm glad, I was really been looking forward to the show. I always look forward to when you come on because it's just always so informative and people go,
Yeah, they
That's
either do
part
that or
one.
lose their minds afterwards.
Exactly. I was like, did he just say what I think he said? Yes.
Uh, unfortunately, I
Probably.
did.
Yeah,
I'm
probably.
that's kind of my MO. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I'm
love it.
excited to get on and talk about some of my research and the new updates.
I love it. I love it. I know you had mentioned skin sigils, and
Yeah.
there's so much that goes on with that, manifestations and rituals. And I think it's a bit deceiving as well, right?
It is. It is. Of course, some of this is psychosomatic, but when you have Egyptian hieroglyphics emerging from underneath the skin to the surface, something more sinister is at hand, and we don't really have a way to quantify that, right? I mean, even the
Yeah.
vocabulary fails at times.
Hmm.
But there is a common pathology through and through, and that is that alleged extraterrestrials
Yeah.
are carving sigils into abductees, and nobody's talking about it.
I freaking did not see that coming. I'm just going to put that out there. Of course, you'd come out with something that off in left field. I
Yeah.
did not see that coming. I did not. I did not.
Oops.
I know, but I love that. I love that because
Yeah.
there's so much out there on this sort of thing. And I think people
Mhm.
kind of fall into it and they don't realize what's really going on.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And just from my perspective and the conversations I've been having with other ufologists is that there is this kind of front that is being put forward that, oh, well, we know for sure they're extraterrestrials. And the same ufologists that are saying that are
Yeah.
building altars to these things. And
Mm,
so that's where my model, I mean, we're already in it, right? That's where my model has to evolve, not that
yeah.
I believe we're dealing with demons, but there is a profound amount of
Mm.
ritual magic being employed here. And that is alarming to me as a researcher.
Nathaniel, I have to tell you, I mean, sure, you don't need me to tell you, but it seems to be a thing that is an ancient thing as
Yeah.
well, that it goes on in a lot of the upper crust of our world. That's probably better
Mhm.
suited for the uncensored show. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of it going on. I think it's something that's never gone away,
Right.
right?
Oh, it's always been there. And yeah, so it is, unfortunately,
Yeah.
it is a part of the phenomenon. And myself and a couple of other people have been researching down this rabbit hole. And every time we get to a conclusion, we're either pushed back by the phenomenon or,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
I get in a car wreck. Remember that? Okay, let's start with this, Michelle. Do
You
you remember
go.
the other night when I requested prayer or some kind of assistance? Remember that?
Hmm.
I could feel the the heavy breath of the phenomenon wafting over my shoulders
Mm.
like I have in times past. And so I was very,
Hmm.
very nervous.
Yes.
Well, a few days ago, my family and I get into a car on our way to go get some pizza for dinner. And out of nowhere, we still don't know how this happened, but at 65 miles an hour, we were hit head on and spun 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
Oh my
It-
gosh.
uh,
What the
yeah,
hell?
absolutely.
Oh my God.
And
I'm
so,
glad you guys are okay.
oh, it was a
Everybody's
miracle.
okay. Everybody's okay.
Yeah, it was raining outside, or else, so well, the initial impact spun the car around 3 times.
Mhm.
That was freaky.
Mhm.
But I guess here my point is that is because of the rain on the ground, right? There wasn't that kind of jolt. It just spun. It took out.
Mhm.
Anyways, long story short, I started to ask some very deep questions, right? Like, do I want to continue in the field, or do I just want to go get a shelf stocking job and just
Nah.
listen to
Yeah.
your episodes on here while I'm doing it? Because the
Yeah.
phenomenon, believe it or not, the love and light phenomenon has the ability to self-correct and employ a
Yes.
control mechanism to where if you get too close, it will delete you.
Mhm. You
Thank you,
have to
Johnny. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, you have to be so careful. But in the
Yeah.
same respect, it's almost as though, do you cave to the threat? I
Right.
mean, I've had so much happen to me throughout the years working in this field, and I always forged ahead. And only one time did something happen to a family member of mine, and it sort of humbled me a lot. I think it does. It humbles you when you
Yeah.
have this situation. You realize how powerful these things can be. So
Oh
it was
my
a hard
God.
choice for me very early on. It humbled me, and it changed and set precedents for how I did things moving forward.
Yep, I'm the same way here, my friend. And what's so fascinating about this is like with each new revelation I get in my own research,
Mm,
the fun, like I said, it does push back, but just
yeah.
beyond the pushing back,
Hmm.
things start popping off. Like I'm formally being mentored by one of my heroes now. We've actually
Hmm.
set a time and date. And so once a week, he's going to be mentoring me.
Hmm.
And in addition to that, the research is getting out. What's so fascinating about this, it's hilarious to me, because I never
Hmm.
anticipated this. Uh,
Yeah.
but there's a lot. I've had occultists follow my work now, and I'm not bragging. It's fascinating. Like, what in the world's going? A preacher, a pastor is following my research now, and it's like
Mm,
it's everybody
yeah.
wants to know, and it's a unique niche, and I'm blessed.
Yes, it is, and you're always going to have people out there sending, bad juju, or you're going to have,
Yeah,
you may have people who are very well versed in the arts, so to speak, who could
oh yeah,
also be the culprits behind a lot of this. So, all you can do is forge ahead, make sure you're protecting yourself energy wise,
right.
and you will persevere. Can't keep a good guy down. Good researcher, even more
Yeah,
so, right?
there we
Right.
go. There we go.
I
Absolutely.
know, I'll be a cheerleader. Go, Nathaniel, go.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Go,
Woo, yeah.
Nathaniel.
Yo, go. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my lord, we're a hot mess. But yeah, it's the
Yeah.
research has to be done, and like I said before, it seems like every time I'm pushed back on the horizon,
Hmm.
there are new insights, and so I guess I don't even know where to begin with the show, but I mean, pretty much what I'm into right now, the research I'm doing right now, is still trying to understand why it is that multiple people can witness one entity
Hmm.
and come back saying that it looked like something completely different. So it's one entity, but it's witnessed differently by the experiencers. And so there's a
Hmm.
lot to unpack there. So I don't know where you want to
Hmm.
start, my friend, because you know me,
Well, I
we go
mean,
everywhere.
let's start with there because it picks up
Yeah,
where we left off
yeah,
on the new show, and then we
mhm,
can get into skin sigils and
yeah,
everything to know about that. The
yeah.
dangers, how it happens, why it happens. Let's get into all of that.
That's
You
cool. So,
take it anywhere you want, my friend. The stage is yours.
oh my God. All
I
right.
know, I know.
So yeah, so here's essentially what I've been doing now is I'm looking at different cases of the CE5 movement where
Mm,
what they're witnessing with their eyes is not at all what they're catching on camera.
mm-hmm.
And so the phenomenon seems to be incarnating two different manifestations. This is going to be
Okay.
fascinating.
Yes.
And so what I've been looking at is like, okay, what's going on here? Well, for those who aren't familiar with the CE5 movement, essentially what it is, it's proposed by Stephen Greer. And basically,
Hmm.
these people will go out. Andrew knows what's up right there because I'm going to get into the observer effect. But what they'll do is they'll go out to the skies at nighttime or something and they'll observe the phenomenon and they'll make a conscious connection with it.
Mm,
And so my theory for the longest time, and I've done lectures on this very subject matter, is that we're not conjuring them. They're conjuring us.
mm.
And so what's happening here is they think when this conscious connection is made by this intelligence, what it is giving them, what it is giving their eyes to see is completely different than what's actually incarnating on film. So we don't really even know what's actually manifesting. Here's
Mhm.
why. So to kind of break it down even further, my good friend Dr. Barry Fitzgerald and Steve Mera, they were doing Project Doorway. And I know this because I was picking his brain about it. I'm like, okay, there's something to this, but I need some.
He's well versed. Yeah.
Oh my God, right? He's
Very. Yeah, he is.
unbelievable. And so what he said was that while they were observing the phenomenon, like observing it, and then the phenomenon incarnated, that they had a brainwave head device
Mm,
that was measuring their brain waves as the phenomenon incarnated.
mhm,
And within 20 seconds, it took them from a regular brainwave activity to theta brainwave activity, which is
mm,
trance level, like you're
mhm,
sleeping, right? You're in a dream state at that point. And so what they realize, the same thing that I'm saying right now, is that we have to be very careful,
Mhm.
because by the time we understand what's going on, the phenomenon has the ability to trigger us, to create the conscious connection. And now it's not just manifesting to us, it's manifesting through us.
Mhm.
And it's guiding our gaze towards a certain part
Mhm.
where it's manifesting.
Mhm.
And so that's my point here, is that it's almost like the phenomenon will give a person a download, and they think, oh my God, right, I'm in control of this. I'm going to go out there and create the conscious connection. Well, the conscious connection's already made by the time you go out there to observe.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so it's this whole concept. Anyways, that's where I'm at right now. And I think it's
Yeah.
fascinating, because we see that pathology through and through in the field work,
Mhm.
where even when you're interfacing with an entity, you have maybe 25 to 30 seconds at most
Mm.
before that entity starts to manipulate your perception of reality and of it. And so when people come to me like, okay, Nathaniel, what do you recommend me like doing? Like, what can I do to fight them off? It's like, well, you only have about 35 seconds, if that,
Right.
before it starts to literally manipulate your brain.
Mhm.
But that's where I'm at, and it's just exceedingly dangerous. I had a
Mm.
case one time years ago where it was a CE5 practitioner, groomed, like literally, like educated by Stephen Greer himself, and she had thought she was doing CE5 with extraterrestrials. She goes back home and a full-bodied apparition manifests in her room.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
what we're seeing with our eyes is not necessarily what's actually incarnating, and that's disturbing to me.
Do you think it's just opening up a door, for example? I mean,
Mhm,
there's one incidence that I saw with the CE5, because I mean, to me, CE5 is interesting, but I mean, anybody who any experiencer for the most
mhm.
part can connect. Like
Yep.
I just telepathically just say, okay, I'm ready for an experience, for example. All of a sudden all the stuff starts happening, the lights, all the traditional stuff. So it's interesting, what you say. But there was
Mhm,
one thing that was presented on one of Dr. Greer's documentaries, was that of an older man who said he
mhm.
couldn't hear very well.
Yep.
And do you know the one I'm talking about? And he's just like, I don't
I believe
hear
so.
very well. And all of a sudden someone captured a picture with a gray behind him with its hand on his ears, and the next morning he could hear. He said, I
Interesting.
my hearing came back, and somebody captured these images. So it's sort of like, okay,
Yeah.
so this is a good thing. To my knowledge, a man has not lost his hearing. So
Right.
how do you split that? I mean, is every situation like that, or do you think there's actual
Mm.
probability that, or possibility that some are genuine?
I think some are genuine. I just think
Yeah.
that there are so many accounts where by the time the person understands what's
Yeah.
happened, I mean, like let's go with Diana Walsh Pasuka, for instance.
Yes, yes.
I think that she says a lot without saying it, and he that hath an ear to hear hears it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like people like me who do study religion and folklore, she'll drop little nuggets and then like lead you to the water and hope you drink. She can't really
Mhm.
say much because a lot of these people have clearances. So
Yes,
I've
yes,
talked to people that have them, so they could say things without saying it. But she was talking about CE5, and this gets back into skin sigils and burnings
yes,
on the skin.
yes.
Uh, is that she was talking to Gary Nolan, and Gary Nolan was giving her photographs of burns on
Wow.
people's bodies immediately after a successful initiation into CE5. Now,
Mm.
there's a lot to unpack here. Number one, she said that it was after looking at the photographs that she went home and prayed.
Mhm.
So why would somebody go home and pray if they were just burns?
Yeah, there's a genuine anxiety and fear. So where does that come from? Well, mind you, if you come up with birds, it's
Yeah,
kind of unnerving, let's face it.
of course.
Yeah.
But myself, I would think, okay, yeah, it's negative, but I wouldn't go home and pray unless, I'm just going to
Mhm.
throw this out there. This is pure speculation.
Yes.
But I can tell you with a surety that we're also finding burns in the field on demoniacs,
Mhm.
and even Paulino, which I'll get to Diana Pasuka in a second again. Even Paulino, before he passed, he did a lecture at the
Mhm.
University of Exeter, and in it he has video footage of an exorcism
Mm.
occurring, and the entity was sigilizing her,
Wow. So,
performing a ritual on her, right? And with burns, by the way.
wow. So did which sigils
Mhm.
surfaced?
There we go. I don't know. I have to go
Wow.
look at it. It's been a long
Interesting.
time.
Yeah. Very
But I can
interesting.
tell you that the burns, see where I'm going with this, Diana, the
Yes.
burns,
Yes.
allegedly, right? I'm
Yes.
thinking that what we're not being told, because I have a collection of them myself, photographs and video footage of it. But
Mm.
I think what we're not being told about this is that there are C5 practitioners that are getting burned, but these burns aren't some mindless, unguided process, that there is a pathology present, that these are
Mm.
not just scratches, that they are
Mhm.
symbols.
Mhm. Yes.
And to that point, the reason I say that is because before Dr. Carla Turner had died, she had this kind of group of ladies within her local town that she would meet up with. And I'm working with one
Mhm.
of the sons here, and he told me it's a fascinating case study. Anyways, Dr. Turner was also being abducted. And along with her and a couple other ladies, what was happening is the phenomenon would have materialized to them as crepuscular balls of light.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so it would hover over them. And the next day, they would be covered head to toe. Literally, this is the word from the son. My mother was covered head to toe in sigils that burned, so much so that,
Wow.
yeah, like, it's weird.
Yes.
But so much so that they took her to the ER, and the physician didn't know what to say. And so all he did was, get her a heated blanket, and
Mhm.
maybe these will leave in due time. And sure enough, they did. But they followed the process of
Mm.
a famous occultist, Austin Osman Spar, which
Mhm.
it's a three stages of biosigilization within these experiences. Number one, it's when the body, what is it? The body absorbs the sigil, and then it activates it. And then at the very end, it expels these sigils. Well, these abductees of alleged extraterrestrials went through all of those processes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I'm suggesting here, absolutely, that we're not being told the full story. And that is that during some of these CE5 events, the phenomenon is triggering sigilization,
Mm.
not just burns. Burns may accompany them,
It's like
but they're
branding
again,
almost.
absolutely, yeah, it's biosigilization where
Mm.
this gets very dark, but where the entity is literally writing itself into the body.
Mm. That's not completely unheard of. I mean, there's so many things out there that want to get back into this
Yep,
physical realm, you know?
absolutely.
Mm.
So whatever we're dealing with, it's like
Yeah.
it's not an accident that a lot of these real UAP encounters,
Mhm.
they trigger initiation within the witness.
Mhm.
Where and I think a lot of what we're seeing is product placement within ufology, where the
Mhm.
phenomenon will fly by a pilot. Like one guy's Matthew Roberts. I probably mentioned this past interview.
Mm.
Matthew Roberts witnessed a gimbal UAP, and this is unique, right?
Mhm.
Like if it's our technology, this doesn't happen. If it's their technology, it does. And so
Interesting.
his testimony was that he was a pilot and flew by the gimbal UAP, and he went home that night. While he's in bed, a voice came to him
Okay.
and began to basically recruit him and gave him specific authors and specific books to read, all of which were in the occult.
Mm.
And my friend, in the middle of the night, he was visited by a succubus. And after the ritual was performed, he came away thinking that they were trying to initiate him into some kind of
Mm.
mystery school.
Mhm.
So all of this speaks to at least a faction of these beings. Because I have to hedge myself
Mhm.
because people are like, really? Um, at least a faction of these beings seem to be a part of a mystery school or some occult lineage.
Mhm.
And under the guise of ufology, yeah,
Mm.
whatever they are, I don't know, but the ceremonial aspect and ritual aspect is present through and through.
There have been so many beings, I mean, that we're here. We're not the first kick at the can. There have been things on this planet a long, 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 long time, and there are things that come in dimensionally. It's not just, portals. Sometimes some of them can be here just with the mere thought that they're here. I think it's a matter of looking into, is this more of a I'll just label it as paranormal. So most people will separate them into categories. Not everybody realizes how connected everything really is. It's like one big ball of mess, but from a paranormal standpoint where you're dealing, actually, I think this is what Kurt is saying. Thanks, Kurt. That'll help. Spirits, ETs, cryptids, ghosts, past loved ones, how many different areas are out there that blend into one another exactly to communicate behind the curtain. So what are we dealing with? Is it ET or is it something more supernatural?
I think, I'm leaning more towards supernatural.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, these are just placeholders for something we've yet to understand.
Mhm.
Let me give you a case that I read the other day that when the phenomenon started to really, really tune up for me. Anyways, I got a book called Dark Gods. And people that have been watching me for the last few days are going to hear this on other shows I've done, but who cares?
Yes.
It's what I'm into right now. So, it's not going to change. I'm not going to make stuff up. Anyways, I started getting this book. I started reading it, and I'm starting to, oh my God, like my model of the phenomenon seems to be, at least in my research, seems to be getting more accurate. And this author is going down the list of scientists who were employing the scientific method to study ufology and parapsychology.
Mm.
And I'm talking like 10 of them.
Mhm.
And each and every time they started to employ the scientific method, they were met with something that transcended everything for them. And
Mhm.
that was more supernatural. Like,
Mhm.
like it literally was to the extent that they were toying with the simulation hypothesis
Mhm.
that we're just trying to study the paranormal because it's the black cat in the matrix that says, okay, there's something wrong here
Mhm.
and we need to focus on it. And so, one by one, these scientists started to realize that there is a supernatural aspect to this, one that cannot be measured, cannot be quantified
Mhm.
by the scientific method, and that these seemingly, and this is why the book's called Dark Gods, were practitioners of the occult that,
Mhm.
like, we don't even have a framework for, right? How powerful they would be, but that's the only thing that is similar.
Mhm.
Anyway, so one by one, they would go and give their theses, but one by one, before they actually released their findings, they were found dead in deserts with a gun in their hand.
Oh boy. Yeah. Mm.
Where, right, the phenomenon, and this is what it's pointing to, because I'll get to another case study that'll freak you out, freak me
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Where the phenomenon did not want this to be told,
Mhm.
right? Where this intelligence will promote some people and it'll take other people out who get too close to the truth or the source. And in fact, there's a gentleman named Professor Rene Harding who was an inventor. He had 250 different patents. He too was approaching this through the scientific lens, but he kept running up against a species on Earth that were like the Adjustment Bureau, who would literally materialize in front of you and then leave. And he didn't know what to make of that.
Mm.
And so at one point, he told his family and all of his colleagues, he goes, "Okay, I've got my thesis here.
Mhm.
My model of the phenomenon was originally scientific, materialistic." He's like, but it's obliterated now, right? I have to start from scratch. Here's what I have. We are being manipulated by another species of ultra terrestrials. They seem to be occultists, and they're manipulating reality around us. Dies. His
Uh,
family comes back. Family
mm.
comes back, right, and says there's no way he would have done this to himself. There's malevolence here. Someone
Yes.
did this,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So then they go to his funeral, and hundreds of people are there. So he's very, very famous in his field. So as they're all sitting down, a group of 6 men, very tall men, walk in the back door. They sit together. They talk to a few people. People photograph them. People remember speaking to them. Then one of the family members goes back and says, "Yeah, who were they? Did anybody know who they were?" Nobody knew who they were. And here's the kicker, Michelle. When they went back to the camera, they weren't picked up. They were not on camera at all.
No. So like cloaked.
Something.
Well, that is a paranormal thing. I mean, it's funny. It could go either way. Sometimes you You know, you capture things on camera that you don't see with the naked eye. Sometimes it's the other way around.
Yeah.
So
To be able to do that, though,
it's a
right?
it's a major projection of energy on both counts. You know, to
Just
be able
walking
to,
in.
yeah, yes, yes. I just want to get to a couple of comments before we get too
Okay.
far. Okay. Okay. This is about the CE5. So we're already
Yep.
like away from it. What do they catch on camera? I know they see orbs and crafts in
Mhm.
person. So some people are actually seeing things
Yep.
at the CE5s. Okay.
It varies. It varies. I know sometimes it is just okay. Sometimes it is just a ball of light.
Hmm.
And then like I had a case where it's like they went, yes. I had a case where a couple,
Hmm.
they were on vacation going through the mountains of Tennessee, and they pull over to see this beautiful lake.
Hmm.
And these are like super religious folk. They don't do anything paranormal. They don't believe in it other than, like angels and stuff. Well,
Hmm.
um, they take a picture of this beautiful lake, and then they look at the picture, and there is a metallic cigar-shaped object hovering just above the water.
Hmm.
So it's cloaking. Now, this gets even deeper, that sometimes the phenomenon will cloak itself in reality,
Hmm.
where we think it's a cloud, it's not. Or dare I say, even with like the drone excursions in New Jersey.
Mm.
Have you heard about that?
Oh, yes.
So about the FBI agent, this is
Ah.
fascinating too. The
Mhm.
FBI agent who came forward, and she said, the weirdest thing happened to me the other day. And I forget who it was. It was one of the researchers. I have to get his name. But anyways, he's like, okay, what happened? She's like, well, this drone flew over my house. It was hovering right up at my house. And he's like, well, how did you know it was a drone? She's like, well, at first it was a helicopter.
Mhm.
And she said that we heard it. She's like, but I've flown in helicopters when I was in the military. She's like, the thing that was
Mhm.
missing was there was no reverberation. It was just noise. So
Mm.
whatever this was pumping in sound
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
make us think it's a helicopter.
Mhm.
And so what we're seeing now is like even with the New Jersey drones and with
Mhm.
CE5 and even parapsychology,
Mhm.
is that there is a common thematic element, and that they're balls of light. We would call them orbs.
Mhm.
They're everywhere.
Mhm.
And so I was talking to Joshua Cutchin yesterday on Zoom about this,
Mhm.
where beyond all of the archetypes, right, the ghosts, the demons, the cryptids,
Mhm.
there's a common culprit that it's always present, and those are those balls of light.
It's true, it doesn't matter what it is. You're right.
Yeah,
It's the entire, like the orb phenomenon. Like it's, a lot
yeah,
of researchers like, oh, a lot of natural things can project that. Yes, for sure. But
right.
there's also a lot of unnatural things that can
Mhm.
project these things. I mean, you just like,
Oh
why
yeah.
is it that you see them, whenever you have cryptids nearby or you have, crafts
Oh yeah.
nearby, you
Oh my
have
God.
paranormal.
Yeah,
I mean, they seem to be the common denominator and everything.
they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking at now is like parapsychology. Lloyd Arbach, okay,
Mhm.
talking one time about a case he had, and he's like, he goes, we kept seeing this apparition
Mhm.
with our eyes, and this is how the phenomenon uses the observer effect to hide from us.
Mhm.
But he's like, we kept seeing this apparition. So it's okay. Did we catch it on camera?
Mhm.
And no, they didn't. They saw an apparition with their eye, but what they caught on camera was a ball of light. They didn't even see that was there. And
Mm.
so when you're dealing with these corpuscular balls of light, it's like Dr. Barry Taff, right?
Mhm.
Where the St. Pedro
Yes.
haunting, the big balls of light, like basketball sized
Mhm.
floating objects. And they cornered one in a room, and it didn't like it. And so it started popping, and all of a sudden, boom, it projected a half of an apparition that was animated,
Mhm.
and it started looking at them and conversing with them. And
Mhm.
so it's possible, this is what Josh Gupta and I were talking about yesterday. It's possible that all of the phenomena, at
Mhm.
least the manifestations, is propagated by these balls of light. And
Mhm.
when you're interfacing with them, there seems to be this conscious connection where the entity of the phenomenon will start to manipulate your perception. This is why it's
Mhm.
so important that we start to vet these encounters,
Mhm.
you know,
I
because
agree.
anyways, I'll stop rambling. It's
No, no,
anyways.
no, no, ramble away because it just keeps my brain going. And I'm just pondering while you're
Yeah.
speaking. The It's so hard because when you're saying, people are having the same experiences, but they're seeing different things.
Yeah.
And to say, okay, well, we're gonna have to try to vet this. It's so hard because people are just
Oh my
like,
God.
well, we know that we've seen something, but it
Yeah.
varies. It's just you're not meant to see things. I believe that there are certain people that are allowed to see
Mhm.
certain things. And call me
Right.
crazy, but I believe a lot of it even has to do with bloodlines.
Mm.
They were looking for
Absolutely.
something when all of these companies are out there collecting data. I believe they were looking for something. And
Oh yeah.
you start factoring in, you almost have to start asking when these crazy high things that are considered, highly strange. It's just like, what's the blood type? Because
Yeah.
there are some that are just more perceptive to others, and
Yeah.
there are others who are just totally, they don't have experiences, they don't acknowledge experiences,
They don't care.
they don't
Yeah.
know. But there are others that just phenomena just seems to follow them wherever they go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. They have the ability to almost materialize
Mhm,
things. It's fascinating. This is weird stuff too. It's one of my old cases
mhm,
back when I was doing in-home investigations. It was an incubus case where, this is the particular case where the husband had used what he saw on television to I guess, what was it? He attacked the entity or wanted to. It's the right of
mm.
not what is it? The right of provocation.
Oh boy.
And
Oh
so
boy, that's
when I
everything.
first got there, I know, right? I was mad. I'm like, why would you do that? When I first got there, doing investigation and stuff, and all my equipment's out there, and the wife she's a housewife, and they had just got done eating dinner, so there's the dishes and stuff and coffee's on the table. Michelle, her hands are white knuckled on the table, and she's shaking it. Oh my
Mm,
God, he's here, he's here. And so I'm talking to the husband. The husband's like, I don't really believe this is going on. He's like, so what I'm going to do, he's like, usually my wife goes to bed before I do.
mm,
He's like, so she's alone. He's like, and so a lot of what she's experiencing it when she's alone. He goes, so I'm going to figure out what's going on. He's like, I'm tired. He's like, I'm tired of telling her it's not happening because in her mind it is. And so that night, I get a text, and it's Diana, and Diana's like, Nate. She goes, I forget her husband's name, but she's like, yeah, as we're laying down, you could see the bed moving as this thing was creeping in between them as they slept. The husband
no.
said, yeah, he goes, Nathaniel, he goes, I don't understand it. Maybe you can help me out. I'm like, okay, what you got? He said, well, how can I feel it playing with my feet, or at least rubbing up next to my feet? How can it be doing that while also moving my wife's hair? Like literally just playing with it. Weird.
Energy.
And I said, well, I think it's in between you guys. And so then I come back, I think it was the next night, and now half of the side of his face is paralyzed. And I said, "What happened? What happened, man?" And he said, "Well," he goes, I got to watching one of my favorite TV shows, right?" And he said, and they have this thing called rite of provocation. He's like, so I went in there, I went through the whole house, burning sage, and I was yelling at it, "Don't attack my wife, attack me." And he said, so good evening, Wayne. Thank you for joining us. um, he's like, so I go to bed that night, and he goes, I go into a deep sleep.
Mm,
He's like, and he's like, I'm having a dream, and in the dream, something is, what's up, Robert? What's going on, brother? Thank you for showing up, man. I appreciate you being on with us.
mhm,
Um, anyways, so he's getting pummeled in this dream.
mm,
He wakes up to partial paralysis of Bell's palsy. He goes to the hospital. They do tests on he has head trauma. And the doctor asked him, like, what happened? And he's like, well, I didn't know what to tell him, Nathaniel. He goes, but whatever that was beating me as I was sleeping. And I forget what my point is, but I swear to God,
Uh-oh. Oh
it
boy.
was Michael Scott, right? You ever start a sentence and you don't know where it's going? No, but
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
point is, when we
Mhm.
were doing that investigation,
Mm.
uh, the woman was trying to call on everybody, like all of her deceased like family members, and it was a very unique experience. But as we're talking, okay,
Mhm.
I get this vision, and I said something's upstairs. What do you mean? I said something's upstairs right now. And Michelle, we heard a door open and heavy footsteps.
Hmm.
I was seeing it. Right, I'm downstairs talking to them at the dinner
Yeah.
table.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it.
Mm.
And anyways, fascinating stuff. But my
Yeah.
point is that there are people that have the ability
Mhm.
to see the phenomenon,
Mhm.
and it triggers a lot in their life, unfortunately.
Do you think it's one of these things that, I mean, I've seen amazing things happen to skeptics, for example.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah,
it's just like, nope, that's just it. They're always the ones that get to see things. Then you get the ones that want it so bad and they just don't get the experience, you know.
yeah,
But there are some things, there's no picking and choosing. You get it whether you like it or not. I spent 2 decades working in the field and, you know, dealing with people who I always say, like, you don't know what it is, but something is leading them to believe that they are experiencing, as you say, a phenomenon of some sort.
right,
And when you're going in to help these people, that is your job, is to help them try to figure out what is happening. You know, it could be a
mhm,
projection of energy. And, you know, it's like I've always said, it's easier for somebody to think that there's something really malevolent happening or
yeah,
infesting their space, and it is for them to think that they're powerful beings that can project incredible energy, you know, with
right,
psychokinesis or
absolutely,
telekinesis, and it's just easier to go for the other. But
yep,
but
and
there are some things that target. Do you believe there are things out there that just simply target you? You know, they like to get in your
oh God,
way.
yeah,
Yeah,
oh God, yeah,
Wayne calls them the men in gray. Yes, like always
yes,
somebody trying to get in there and alter things and just push your buttons. You know.
absolutely. And I think that,
Yeah.
and I was having this conversation with a new pastor friend that I met on Instagram today, and he
Mm.
was telling me what him and his brother went through in their house growing up, and
Mm-hmm.
being forced down into bed, held down, couldn't move. Um,
Mm.
like I guess his brother sent me this post. Is fascinating. He said that there was a portrait of Jesus on the wall,
Mm. Yeah.
and when the phenomenon manifested, it was holding him down. He was paralyzed. He couldn't do anything, but he was able to look at Jesus. He thought, okay, this will help me. You know what I mean? He
Mm-hmm.
looks at Jesus, and the phenomenon had turned its eyes inward.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
people are targeted, and it's okay. It's almost like this, honestly. It's almost like if they cannot initiate you,
Mm-hmm.
they'll target you. And honestly, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
don't want to be part of this? No. Okay, fine. Because you
Mm-hmm.
have the gift of sight. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to see them. And so this gets back to what Paulina was talking about before he died. And he had this, and God bless him, they didn't know what was going on with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't eat, couldn't speak. It was awful. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt really bad. But my buddy Shane Searway told me all about it. And he's like, Paul thinks that the phenomenon is targeting researchers. And so I got on Paul's Facebook and he put out this post and he's listing, I mean, one after another, Michelle, over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he goes, this person got cancer, that person died in a car wreck. And
Mm-hmm.
so finally, at the end of his post, he said, it's almost like whatever we're researching
Mm-hmm.
is targeting and taking certain researchers out.
Mm-hmm.
And this gets back to the simulation hypothesis, where, and I do believe Chris Bledsoe is right about that whatever we're dealing with seems to be a part of like the Adjustment Bureau, where they are on outside of space time
Mm-hmm.
and
It's like the whole
manipulating reality.
Archon thing, right? The Gnostics believed
Yes.
that there were things right outside that have never been
Yep.
here, that were the overseers, that were the ones that, manipulated things that were happening, going
Oh yeah.
on. That's how many
I,
thousands of
I
years has
believe
that
that.
been? Right.
Oh
Do
God,
you think
forever
do you think
ago.
it's getting worse? Because let's go back to CE5 for just a minute. I mean, people who are doing CE5s want the experience. That's why they're there. And
Yeah,
some pay handsomely to have that experience. So they're very serious about wanting to have that experience. But I think, we're also in a day and age where people simply want to know what's out there.
yeah,
Because we've been conditioned, we've been sheltered as far as a race of people goes. Some people have been, seeing things their whole lives. Other people have, not as conditioned, so they're very open to things that weren't, programmed by their parents or their faith or anything like that. But now,
mhm,
just because the amount of people that talk to me, I
yeah,
mean, I have a waiting list of people who just want to come on the show and just talk about it. Um, it just seems to be an influx of people who are looking for these
yeah.
experiences.
Yeah, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. I think
Yeah.
that one of the more interesting aspects of all of this is, when I was growing up in evangelicalism, we had a bookstore at my church, and
Mhm,
I was always like, I wanted to talk about ghosts and angels, anything
mhm,
supernatural. I was
mhm,
all about it.
mhm,
So I remember they had this one book at the bookstore. I opened it up, and they took a photograph of what they considered to be an angel.
mhm,
And it's funny, you remember things. You're like, oh, that I didn't remember it that way. It's weird. Makes total sense now. But anyways, in this
mhm,
photograph, they were at a church service, and they had this what looked to be a light figure.
mhm.
They took a picture of it. It's literally, it looked like an apparition, and then right behind it was a ball of light. And they went around telling, like, convinced that that was an angel. And so on one hand, right, some
Mhm,
people would say, okay, that's all demonic. And others, like, it's like, well, that's
mhm.
literally what they've been using to validate their religion.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, not surprising. I mean, that's a whole show in itself, just trying to go
Oh, yeah.
down that rabbit hole. So,
Oh,
um,
oh yeah.
so let's get back into sigils a little bit. We know that, people are being imprinted, with these things. Is
Mhm.
there a way to get rid of them? Is this something that humans can have imprinted on you just through intentions or rituals, for
Yes,
example, manifestations?
absolutely.
Okay.
And that is consistent with the data set.
Mhm,
A lot, like even with the Collins Elite and some of the evangelical researchers, when they come out and say these are all demons and stuff. Well, the reason they're saying that, like, first of all, it's not without warrant. Like, there is some evidence that, not if not demonic, at least leads to a
mhm,
species of practitioners, and that's more along my model.
mhm,
But whatever we're dealing with is ritual, number
mhm,
one. And number two, it's them branding the experiencer. Now, some of the very first cases of branding we have in demonology were within incubi literature,
mm,
where sigils were accompanied with secretions left by the entity.
mhm, mhm,
And so when you look at this through that lens, you literally see um, the root of hybridization before it was hijacked,
mhm,
right? And redefined. What we had were was the phenomenon incarnating to women
mhm,
and sigilizing them. Now, here's what's also interesting. It gets very dark, unfortunately. But some of these experiencers actually died from encountering whatever these beings are.
mhm, mhm,
And so here's a kind of a little nugget and insight to kind of break this down further. When we're talking about the incubus entity, the reason they called it the incubus is because they were encountering a species that would incubate their own progeny.
mhm,
This
mhm,
is why the painting originated, right? Where it's sitting on top of the womb of the woman.
mhm,
And so, whatever, and literally, this is me trying to properly quantify and articulate what this species is.
mhm,
Um, but whatever they were encountering some kind of practitioner.
mhm,
And what it was doing, and this is Montague Summers' research too in necronetics, is taking the semen seed from a deceased person,
mhm,
using that along with the sigilization. And
mhm.
at the moment of conception, the sigils would be in, is this okay? I don't want to get too crazy, but
Not
it's
go
a ritual.
crazy. This is why you're here.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the sigilization. This is called chaos magic,
Yes.
where the
Yes.
sigilization took
Yes.
place at the moment of insemination,
Mm-hmm.
and then the hybrid mother, right, is impregnated by another species.
Mm-hmm.
Well, whatever that species is, they knew what they were experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
and so they would try to, oh, it's an incubus, it's incubate, and
Mm-hmm.
so their hypothesis,
Mm-hmm.
this is crazy, was that through the biosigilization and the secretions and
Mm-hmm.
chaos magic,
Mm-hmm.
that the practitioner was creating a hybrid within the body of the mother and taking it as its own biological avatar. Now,
Mm-hmm.
those experiencers, some of them died. And in one particular case study, Sinistroy was performing I think it was an investigation on the body or something, looking for sigils and carvings,
Mm-hmm.
and they were finding sigils underneath the armpits
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
underneath the eyes.
Hmm. Yeah.
So the
That's interesting. Underneath
pathology,
the eyes.
right?
Yeah.
Because every time she would close her eyes at nighttime, she's staring directly into
Yeah.
the
So
sigil.
behind the eyelid sort of thing, right? Like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So my perspective now is that extraterrestrials may exist. I'm not saying they don't. What I am saying is that we're collecting data here
Mm-hmm.
uh, that it does point to ceremonial and ritual magic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you say, that there are Egyptian sigils, what points to that as far as what type of sigils?
Yeah.
Like, are we
So,
looking at something with ill intention, maybe, or is it all ill intention? I mean,
oh
there are
my God,
protection
well,
sigils, right? Yeah, because there could be
this
good sigils, bad sigils.
this gets really interesting. This
Okay.
is some of the I love this research. Anyways, so the experience that Dr. Carla Turner was working with before the phenomenon targeted her,
Mhm.
it was a lot like jinn,
Mm,
where the sigilization directly coordinated with jinn sorcery,
mhm,
and after the ritual was performed. So what I think is going on is that these sigils are the byproducts of rituals being performed on the other side.
mm. Wow.
And when that ritual is performed to completion, then we start to see the sigilization in the body going through the three stages
Mm,
of absorbing, activating, and expelling. Um, but what was happening is Dr. Carla Turner had a group of ladies within her city. They were all meeting together for coffee at a house one night. And
mm.
they're talking about this, right? Like, okay, what happened to you last night? Well, they took me. Okay, well, what happened? I got this on my arm and this, that kind of stuff. And the phenomenon after sigilizing them would materialize apports in their homes.
Mm. Isn't that
And I
interesting?
asked, oh my God. I said,
Mm.
what? Because I mean, that's way more interesting than extraterrestrials to me. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's pretty
Um,
scary.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Mm.
well, what was it? What was the phenomenon giving you? And he said it was money. Money would just appear. And he's like, tons of it. And he's like, it was from all, what do you say? All time zones, like different
Crazy.
countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Where and I'm thinking that what we're looking at again is that all of these phenomena are connected, at least, where
Mhm.
we're seeing portions of the ritual being performed and we're on the other side, right? So that's fascinating stuff.
That is fascinating. Absolutely. But I mean, what about people who use sigils for, I mean, you hear about sigils, most people hear about sigils through,
Mhm.
Solomon had all kinds of,
Right.
sigils, names, again, demonics. And then there are protection sigils. I mean, I know people
Mhm.
who have branded
Mhm.
sigils of protection on their hands, that are
Mhm.
always there, who are in the field, who believe they're
Right.
protection sigils.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I don't know, is there any danger to that? I mean, can you even remove these things once they've been imprinted on you?
So
Mm,
the particular species that I'm tracking now,
mhm,
they transcend. I mean, civilizations occurs, but it's like they transcend all known. mystery schools. They have their own brand,
Right.
no pun intended,
Yeah.
of sorcery.
Yeah.
The remote viewer son, again, I was working with, taken by his guides, right? They thought, oh my God, this is my guides. This is amazing. We're
Mhm.
going to live happily ever after. And it was essentially an abduction account, right? He's out of his body.
Mm.
He's meeting with his alleged guides, but he's in this silver metallic room,
Right.
and he's looking at these things, and he realizes that I'm not where I'm supposed to be, and these aren't who I'm supposed to be with. And that's when they change their shape
Hmm.
into what they really looked like. He
Mhm.
gets back into his body, and Egyptian hieroglyphics start to emerge from underneath the surface to the skin. So whatever that
Oh,
is, I don't think it's for us. I don't think
yeah.
it's good.
Right.
And the sad thing is that this is happening to people, not just without their permission, but in many cases without their own knowledge, to where they wake up the next day and they realize they have been written into and acted upon by whatever this species is.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And but yeah, it's dark stuff sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Dolly says humans are capable of bringing evil to each other, but not ET. That is not her belief.
Yeah, that's
Are
fine.
sigils on the body sort of like runes on rocks and materials or hieroglyphs? Just curious.
Um, it's iconography for sure. And it does seem to be Egyptian, some of them. But the other sigils I've collected are Theban,
Mhm.
which again goes back to as an alphabet in medieval sorcery.
Mhm.
So I think this is why some of these people, I mean, they would, right? If the only background they have is in demonology, they would look at this and say, okay, that's got to be horns and hooves.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it doesn't fit the model. I mean, if we're dealing like okay, Albert Bender, for instance,
Mhm.
he thought, right? He thought for sure he was studying extraterrestrials.
Mhm.
He knew it.
Yeah.
In fact, when they manifested to him, only then did he realize that it was just a ruse, and
Mhm.
that his altar that he had built to them had actually helped further their incarnation. And
Mhm.
so this is crazy too, where uh, like all the other scientists I mentioned, he approached it from the ETH. That's what they told him. That's what he believed.
Right.
And so he had fulfilled like a bunch of research and thought, okay, I'm going to create my thesis on this.
Mhm.
And he concluded that it's not extraterrestrial at all. It's beings that light him. And so at the end of the day, he writes a letter to his best friend detailing his discovery.
Mhm. Mhm.
He gets a knock at the door, and it's men who hand him the letter that he mailed.
Mhm.
And he's talking to these things, and he's thinking again, right? He's like, at first I thought I was in ufology and that it was just strictly ufology.
Mhm.
He's like, but whatever these things are,
Mhm.
shapeshifted directly in front of him. And that's when he came to the conclusion that this does seem to be entire, at least his perspective, was
Mhm.
initiation to bring people in under the guise of ufology. But once you actually get to know them,
Mhm.
it's something completely different. And that was his model, at least.
Yeah, Dolly's saying my lab. Oh, they've been known to do some funky stuff.
Right.
I have a very interesting question for you.
Yep.
Okay. Woo Riders. Question: has Nathaniel ever heard of people eating the sigil sign engraved in human flesh to take over the sigil and the representation that the sigil brings?
Yes. And
Interesting.
this is really bad. Okay, I think it's the Gilgo Beach Killer.
Mm,
I'm pretty sure it's what it is. I think his
mhm.
name is. Let me look it up real quick because I don't
Yeah.
want to get it wrong. Anyways, what happened is that the FBI, when they got a hold of, yeah, Gilgo Beach, he's a Long Island serial killer.
Mhm.
When they got a hold of him and started to interrogate him, they went throughout his house and got all of his like phones, his iPads, his laptops. They discovered, and this is very, very dark, but this would be along the along the lines of what species we're dealing with and the way they act. They discovered his daughter's laptop. They
Mm,
go through her search history. She had been in some really, really bad websites and had actually taken all of her father's victims and had
mm.
ritualized them
Ooh.
in one. Yeah, and it was the darkest sorcery you could ever imagine.
Mhm.
And they actually held a press conference about this, saying, "Okay, yeah, we've got the killer, but it's the daughter we're really worried about." Because what he was doing is on the outside, which we were going to have another show about serial killers. It's funny. Um, what they realized was on the outside, it did look like he was just killing random people.
Mhm.
But what happened was that there was kind of like this coven of
Mm.
sorcerers that were taking these victims and doing exactly what that question asked,
Mhm.
writing sigils and biting the flesh in order to perform rituals for whatever this species is.
Mhm. Mm. It gets really deep, very diverse. Like it goes off into
Yeah,
so many different directions. It's crazy.
that's just my ADHD.
I know how your head works, Nathaniel.
You're like, yeah, it just goes everywhere. I'm like, no,
I,
that's me.
yeah, it's true.
Oh
I've known you a while. I know. That's why I say just go with
Lord,
it. Just go crazy.
absolutely.
Because that's where the good stuff comes out. When you just start,
Yeah, I guess.
really, right? So,
But that's what they realized is that this was sorcery.
mhm,
You know, under the guise of yeah, serial killers and stuff. But anyways, my point
mhm,
here is that there's initiation occurring, and I just have a hard time with the ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis,
mhm,
when like that one case I have where the mother thought she was taken by ETs, right?
mhm,
It
mhm,
made her think that when in
mhm.
reality she was never taken anywhere. She was under the influence of balls of lights.
Right, right.
But I think there's a question there. I can't. I thought
Well,
I
no,
caught it.
I just put up comments.
Okay.
And so I believe 100% of all these topics give me another reason why not to have kids.
Oh Lord.
Uh-huh. Alan says sigils work the same way as any other sympathetic magic
Yep.
or sympathetic magic is you create a physical thing that goes out into the spiritual world that comes back to affect the physical world. It comes
Absolutely.
down to intent. Intent is huge. It absolutely is. Intent is
For
huge.
sure.
So, okay, so let's just say you were victimized again. You're a victim
Mhm.
of these sigils in one form or another, targeted, obviously, branded, whatever the case may be. We can call it what we want. I think we're on the same page with it.
Yep.
Can you undo it?
Mm.
Can it be undone once it's been done? Or are you forever the
Yeah.
victim?
Well, this is something I've been looking at here lately. It's like, okay, what did that experiencer encounter after the sigilization?
Hmm.
Um, the possibility exists. This is more like a probability.
Hmm.
Is that some of these sigils are the result of a ritual already taken place, not
Hmm.
taking place, but
Hmm.
already taken place,
Hmm.
to where it's kind of, and this is, we've seen this as well with Jack Parsons, where he combines scientism
Hmm.
with ritual magic, to where they're combining sigilization with some kind of scientific experiment, where
Hmm.
the experiencer, right? I'm on a table and they think, okay, yeah, it's just some kind of scientific MyLab or something, and it's not.
Hmm.
They're being sigilized, and then they don't understand that till later on. They go through memory regression, they realize, whoa, there's a lot more here.
Hmm.
Now, with respect to this species, again, if they have the ability to literally, and this is to create physiological constructs,
Hmm. Hmm.
right, to literally fabricate reality,
Hmm.
hiding in plain sight, then we really don't have a way to quantify them. Because even if we do say, like within the occult, okay, I have the ability to fight with this way, or to create my own sigils, whatever they're doing seems to transcend all of that. So there are hints of the occult in it,
Hmm.
but it seems like they had their own species, unfortunately.
Isn't it sort of like, I'm just going to throw this out there,
Mhm.
curses. Throughout the years, I've had so many people say, curses on me, can you change this? I'm an energy worker. I can work energy very easily. Frequency, I work with frequencies, frequency, vibrations. I mean, I come from a family that my grandfather, I grew up hearing, no, we're energy movers. Just as I grew up, I had to educate myself on that because sadly he
Mhm.
passed before he could really teach me anything. So it took me years and years to really understand what it was I can do and how I can manipulate that. Now, with that being said, with curses, I've been able to reverse that for some people.
Yeah.
However, I also believe that if you give it power, that it will hold power and hold court
Mhm.
over an individual,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
can you not just through mindset and not empowering what this is? Because if it's a ritual, that's energy
Mhm.
that's put onto you. Can you not reverse that somehow or just don't manifest it into your life? Don't put so much belief in it that it
Yeah.
owns you.
And yeah, that's another fascinating aspect about it. I
Yeah.
think that that's the next stage of the research.
Mhm.
And Johnny's
Mhm.
right. This is a form of tulpomancy, and this
Yeah.
gets back to the idea that the tulpa is not just a thought form.
Yes.
It's the entity forming the thought that becomes the thought form.
Sunderman.
There we go. Right. Does it
People
exist? Well, it didn't until we
no,
believed in it.
they
And
manifested it. Yes.
there we go. And now
Yeah.
that gets back to the observer effect, right? Where
Yes. Yes.
in quantum mechanics, which I do believe that explains why you have multiple witnesses of the same phenomenon,
Mhm.
but they all see different things, right? Where
Mhm.
by observing it, they are collapsing different versions of the same entity at the same time.
Mhm. Well, I'll put another one out there. Let's look
Yep.
at Santa Claus. We know the
Santa baby.
traditional looking Santa Claus was what? Invented by Coca-Cola, the whole red
Yeah.
okay. So, with that being said, there are actually researchers who do nothing but research this. And this has to be one of the biggest tulpa stories ever because people on Christmas Eve have reported seeing a man dressed exactly like that coming down through their fireplace, showing up in their house. Sometimes he's really irate because you're awake. Some people have seen Santa and his elves like
Yeah.
walking down the street, like, when it's really quiet. I mean, people have witnessed this. This is
Oh, yeah.
supposed to be like this jolly guy who's not so much. So, this is another
Yeah.
manifestation that is a global thing.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's why it's so important to promote literacy within the paranormal, if I may
Mhm,
say that.
mhm,
Because what I'm seeing, even demonology and some of these darker
mm,
cases,
mhm,
where a person will come to me and say, Nathaniel, I saw a demon. It's like, okay, where did you see a demon? What did it look like? Well, this is
mm,
what it looked like. It's okay, but
mm,
that's an archetype,
mm,
right? That's
mhm,
not even based on any literature,
mhm, mhm.
right? But
That's conditioning.
there we go, exactly right. So what
Yeah.
happens essentially is that when the phenomenon incarnates, it hides in plain sight,
Mhm.
right? To us, it would be that, oh, it's demonic, right? And
If they
we're not
show you
realizing.
what you're going to believe,
There we
how
go.
it can hold
Yes.
power over you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I had like for the longest time, I'm like, okay, I'm collecting these cases. And it's like, like even like Ed Warren and them, like they're like, okay, I saw horns and hooves. It's like, okay, well,
Mm,
where did that legend come from?
mhm,
And so what I realized, my friend, yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not denying the experience.
mhm, mhm,
I'm denying the fact that it is what it appears to be.
mhm,
And this is why it's so important to look beyond these archetypes. I mean, if the same balls of light, the same orbs are
mm,
projecting apparitions,
mhm,
angels, demons, ghosts, if they're the same ones projecting aliens,
mm,
then we have a question to ask. We have to be intellectually honest and say, yeah, I can absolutely believe I experienced something without having to buy into the fact that, hey, it was absolutely extraterrestrial. And this gets back to what Albert Bender was realizing was that if they are essentially ET, then why are
mm,
they wanting altars built,
mm. Well, I
right?
mean, it comes down to the belief that these entities, know pretty much everything about you. They know what you're thinking. They're telepathic. So they know
Oh yeah,
exactly like, okay, especially if they're watching you for a while, they're going to know what goes on up here and how they
right.
can project energy or manipulate their appearance where you're going to be affected by that or give it, believe in it enough to empower it, give it strength over you.
Yes. Collins, now let's get to this real quick, because this is another fascinating aspect.
Yeah.
When we're looking at what the phenomenon is doing to individuals. It's not
Mhm.
just the sigilization,
Mhm.
but it's quite literally every stage of initiation into the occult.
Mm.
Like when you're looking
Mhm.
at the triggering of bilocation, where the phenomenon just plucks you out and you're seen out of your body, two places at
Mm.
once, that was a practice originating in sorcery, where I have a book behind me. It
Mm.
talks about it, where the practitioner had the ability to step out of his body, and they called
Mm.
it a double or a twin, to where
Mhm.
he's in two places at once.
Mhm.
So a lot of this, I mean, if it was just one data point, I'd be like, okay, that's just me being suspicious and projecting, but it's not, you know.
I'll tell you, some energy workers believe that we all have a twin, and it
Yeah,
seems to have this tether. We're tethered to this being that would look like a naked being that is, maybe 5, 6, 7 feet
mhm.
away from us in the ether, and whatever happens to that twin happens to us. So let's just
Sympath-
hypothetically
yes,
think
yes.
that this is real. How
Mhm.
much is happening to the twin
There we
that
go.
is affecting us in the physical realm? I mean,
Yes.
if there's any truth to the theory.
Oh, well, let's kind of add some more meat to the bones here, my
All
friend.
right, let's just go crazy.
Um, I'm already there. No,
Yeah, kudos.
so that's called sympathetic magic, right?
Right.
Sympathetic
Yes.
magic. And
Yes.
so, like, we have cases and abductions. Like Dr.
Yes.
Carla Turner had a case where a lady was just not cooperating with her captors,
Mhm.
and the love and light ETs threatened to kill her. I will kill you. We will kill you.
Oh, that's
And
just something that I can't imagine them even talking about.
yeah, well, they pointed to a corner of the room, and there was another body, a copy of her.
Mm.
And again, another data point pointing,
Yeah.
possibly pointing back to, sympathetic magic and sorcery, to
Mhm.
where to what you're saying is that, yeah, it's happening to us, but it's happening to
Mhm.
that body first.
So, yeah, so it's being seen. I know, I mean, there are really gifted mediums out there who say, "No, I see this twin.
Yeah.
It's tethered. It doesn't have
Yeah.
hair, it doesn't have anything. It doesn't have features. It's just a representation of us
Mm.
in energy form, not our soul. It's nothing like that. It's not our
Yeah.
essence, right? It's just so whatever happens is I've been trying to find somebody who can really talk about that to understand what
Mm.
is the purpose of having
Yeah.
this twin, which
Mm.
is not essence. Like
No,
it
matter of
doesn't.
fact, I think we talked about this the last time we did a show. Remember that? The school teacher who was she
Yes.
had a twin next to her. Yeah, out of body, or she was in
Okay.
something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah.
And they I think they all witnessed it. That would be weird. Um,
Mhm,
but you know what? I'll
mhm.
tell you what. Growing up in church, it was fascinating. We had a guy named T.W. Barnes. They called him a big time prophet,
Yeah.
and he had something similar to that, where he went to go pray for a guy that was dying, and the guy got healed. And so the next day, he gets a phone call from the guy.
Mm.
He's like, listen, Brother Barnes. He's like, they call brother and sister there, but anyways, he's like, all right, TW. He's like, I'm back home now. Everything's fine. And
Mhm.
he's like, well, I'm glad everything worked out. We were really worried. And thank you, Alan Henderson. Appreciate it. Even with my ADHD. Um, so anyways, so he gets a phone call from this guy, and this guy's like, yeah, you wouldn't believe what happened to me last night. He goes, what do you mean? Because you stayed with me the whole night, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it.
Oh,
You
yes.
know?
Yeah. I
He's like,
also
he's like, what?
yeah, go ahead.
He goes, what do you mean? He goes, yeah. He goes, you stayed with me the whole night. You sat in the chair by my bed while I slept. And he said, sir, I left at 7:30 on the dot. No, you didn't.
So who was that then?
There we go.
Right. Hey, Carolyn. Yeah. So yeah. I don't know. It's definitely there's so much more to human beings. We're quite complex. Not just so much in the physical, but beyond it. Like we have like we're connected to something out there. It's like the old stories, some people believe, well, I had an aunt who was just a little bit anyway, she goes, "Do you don't ever want to go astral leave your body? There's always things out there ready to cut the astral cord and other things ready to jump into your body." And if she wasn't so kind of In other ways, I almost got it. But she had me terrified. I mean, try,
Oh,
I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, are
oh
these
my
the same
God.
beings that are the
I think so.
ones? Okay, see?
I have a case. It's fascinating. So I did a lecture one time on OBEs in
Mm,
relation to abductions, and a researcher, a very well-known researcher in New England, emailed me. He's like, "We got to talk." I'm like, "Okay."
mhm,
He's like, "I've never told anybody the story, and I'm not even allowed to tell you who he is, but I can give the story to you guys."
mm,
He said, "But he goes, when I was a kid, he goes, the phenomenon would haunt me." I'm like, "Oh, okay." It happens to a lot of us, unfortunately. He
mhm,
said, "No." He said, "This is my origin story." He said, "But I was a very sickly child." And he said, "I was constantly missing school, staying home, just really, really sick."
mm,
And he said that one night he woke up, and in the corner of the room there was a gray
mhm,
staring at him.
mhm,
And actually, let me back up.
mhm,
He said that he was in bed sick, and then he was out of his body. That's what happened, out of his
mhm.
body. And he's looking down at his own eyes and his own face and stuff. And he's looking around the room, and then he spots the gray at the corner of the room. And he said, "I'm looking at this thing, and it's looking at me. I look down at my body and look back at it. It's gone.
The body's gone?
The gray."
Oh, the gray. Okay. I was gonna
Yep.
say, how'd that happen? Okay, no, I
Oh
get
my
that.
God.
Yeah, right.
So now he
Okay.
can't find the gray,
Mm.
but then he realizes that something's in his body moving it.
Wow. So
He
it,
said,
it,
next
it
thing,
jumped into him while he was out of.
yes,
Oh,
absolutely. This
okay.
is one of the creepiest stories I've ever heard. And he said,
Mm,
all of a sudden, this kind of chatter started to come out of his own mouth. And he's like, now I'm up above my body, staring into my own eyes
mhm.
as this thing looked up at him.
Oh, that would just be a bit much for
Oh my
yeah.
God. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, so it's really, really, really weird stuff. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Uh,
I mean, I worked with a therapist like about 5, 6 years ago now, and he told me this kind of a unique story similar to that somewhat. But he
mhm.
said that he was pulled out of his body by something. He was doing like,
Hmm,
was it transcendental meditation or something like that, where
mm.
he had separated from his body, but when he left his body, he looked back and there was some kind of larva that had wrapped around his body, and he couldn't see it when he was in body.
But you could
But
see
when
it
he
out of
left his,
body.
yeah,
Uh, I always, say, I mean, I know people have had phenomenal out of body experiences. They come
mhm,
back in just delightful. But I mean, I believe there's balance. I believe there can be both. If you're being eyed by something,
mhm,
I have said to people who have had out of body experiences and come back with something,
mhm,
I said,
mhm.
you put yourself out there and you can see things, don't think they cannot see you.
Yeah.
It's
Oh my God, yeah.
you're
It's a
you're you're
gamble.
in another realm now. And
Mhm.
I mean, people who have come back changed, who have come back targeted.
Yes, the hitchhiker or the hijacker, as I put it.
Yeah, there we go.
You know,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
it happens a lot. It happens a lot, unfortunately. But they're again, like I'm not saying all of this is dark. What I'm saying
No,
is that there is a faction
it's
within
out
the
there.
phenomenon that seems to be working
Mhm,
with what I call the proto intelligence. That's all throughout the literature.
mhm,
And my biggest fear as of late is like I told you before in our messages, where if I get too
mhm,
close, whatever this is, whatever
mhm,
they are,
mhm.
right? They're transcendent in a way, and that my fear is that they would target me, and I won't be able to watch football and eat chicken wings.
Yeah, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
I have had researchers, and people come on the show and talk about
Mhm.
certain things and then say, I'd say, "Would you want to elaborate more on that? Do you want to come back and keep on, for a part two? Because there was so much to say." And they're
Yeah.
just like, "No, because I'm being watched and I'm afraid
Yep.
that if I put too much more out there, that I become a
Yep.
target." And they did not want to talk about it.
There we go.
Interviews were very sparse. Like you didn't see them on the circuit very much.
Oh yeah. It's something that people need to understand and acknowledge, right? That is happening and has happened. Some of my friends in England, um,
Mm,
they
mhm,
were researching Babylonian demonology,
mm,
and the phenomenon manifested in both of their homes at the same night.
mm.
And I'm talking like one of them was in the fetal position,
Oh, boy.
a grown man
Mhm,
crying his eyes out.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so, yeah, it's that's what it's so it bugs me. So it's all love and light. It's like, yeah,
mhm.
it,
Yeah.
you know, it can't be for
Mhm.
for that matter. The
It's
data
not for
doesn't
everyone.
say that. No, not at
No.
all. And that's what bugs me. It's like, okay, well, people always say I'm always about the darker stuff, and I am. That's what I research. But the research
Mhm,
has to be done. That
mm,
doesn't mean I don't believe that there are some positive experiences or positive entities out there. But
mm.
in the same way, people have to be intellectually honest with me and say, hey, yeah, some of that is dark. We can't just skip over it, look
It
away at it, or
it's
from it rather.
balanced too though, right?
Yeah,
It's balanced.
absolutely.
I've always worked with families having dark experiences because it just didn't take me in the same
Yeah.
way it does with a lot of people. I think certain people can do it, others don't. But I did not have to delve as deep as you do into all these other areas. I just dealt with the matter at hand, which
Mhm.
was you're experiencing something and it's my job to take the weight for a little while, give you a break, I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah,
I believe you? Yes, I believe you're experiencing something.
there we
Now it's
go.
my job to find out what is that something, So that's where, your research comes
Yeah.
in because it's not like this, it's like this, right?
Yeah. Like my
Yeah.
friends have PhDs, I have ADHD. Not the same, similar, but not the same, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And it has to be expansive, right? I mean, in order to understand the pathology behind the phenomenon,
Yes.
you have to look at all of it and not just take, okay, yeah, this is ET and everything else doesn't
Mhm.
matter. None of these
Mhm.
cases exist. And that
Mhm.
and that was painful for me, like I had to grow into the data and grow out of the dogma.
Mhm.
But now that I'm here, we're starting to uncover some really interesting revelations that hopefully will be worth it in the end.
Mhm. Well, you'll find it, you always do.
I know, one way or another.
Yeah, but you have a good
Um,
network of people. I think this is
yeah.
where it's very important, is
Mhm.
working with colleagues who are willing to dive deep with you on that level. A lot of people can't get their heads around that. I'm a natural born researcher, so
Mhm.
I am always interested in hearing different
Yeah.
perspectives. And, I take it in. Like you're here and you're educating all of these people, you're sharing in your research. I take that in.
Mhm.
Like I'm learning that.
That's
I'm
good.
just absorbing that. Right. So it's just that's me. I'm lucky
That's
that
good.
way. I could just take things in so easily. So,
Mhm.
okay. So where do you go next with this? I mean, how do you know you're being targeted? Let's say you're not just
Mm.
I'm going out and going to have a CE5 and I'm going to, or go into these crazy places that could get me into all kinds of mischief
Yeah.
in a dark way. Because some people they love to delve in the dark arts and they don't always realize, something, there's a lure to it. So how do you
Mm.
know you're being targeted?
Well, for me, I can only speak from my personal experience on this one.
Yeah.
It was always a secondary presence, always
Yeah.
at first,
Yeah.
where I felt watched. I felt
Mhm.
like something was observing me.
Mhm.
Um, and then I go, at least like if somebody asks me, like, do I have an attachment or something? I usually go
Mhm.
into their dream life. Like, what have your dreams been like?
Mhm.
You have nightmares. Um, but yeah, for me, there is this kind of ontological loneliness
Mhm. Mhm.
that just curses me. And it's happened lately where I feel completely and utterly alone. And
But
it's something that go ahead.
the closer you get to uncovering something that,
Yep.
you know, if it's happening, it's because there's some truth to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And this gets back to like Dark City and the simulation hypothesis, where
Mhm.
if you get too close to the simulation, you start
Mhm.
peeling back the propaganda, right,
Mhm.
employed by the phenomena. it takes it to heart and it will respond in kind.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about, okay, it's, it's like the military. No, these things are way
Beyond
more
that.
transcendent than that.
If
Yeah,
you,
I mean, yeah.
if we live in a simulation, you're dealing with something considerably deeper and
Oh
darker.
my
You're
God.
you're looking at not the puppet masters of the physical realm. You're looking at the creators of, you know,
Yep.
let me ask you, of the simulation. So let me ask you this,
Mhm.
because there's this hypothesis even about when you die, you should avoid, avoiding the light, because it's like the reincarnation loop of coming
Yeah.
back to the simulation. Is there a way out? Do you believe that somewhere along the line something split and
Oh,
we had the
God help us.
simulation theory? Because it seems to
Yep.
be crazy stuff going on in here. But then you have these people who are able to move to this other realm, which is very gentle.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite commentarians, his name is Nahum Sarna, and he talks about at least text within. We're going to go to the Bible for a fleeting moment, then
Yeah,
I'll
yeah, of
kind of
course.
go in a
Yeah.
different direction.
No, no worries.
Um, anyways, his commentarian, he kept coming across the same phrase where it's like David slept with his fathers, or Abraham was gathered into his ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, he's like, at first blush, we thought this was kind of like a burial motif, right? These people were actually buried with their ancestors.
Mm.
However, he's like, there's a patriarch out there named Moses who they said of him that he slept with his fathers, but he was buried in an unmarked grave. So he said that this must be the authors pointing to an afterlife motif, where at the moment of death, you are gathered by your ancestors, which blew my mind because I'm like, I
Mm.
never heard that one growing up. And then I
Wow,
started
that's
making sense because I
mm,
started talking to people who, like, my grandmother died. It's like, okay, well, what did she experience before she transitioned?
mm,
It was her deceased husband coming
mhm,
to her, and they were communicating. I'm going to go with him now.
mhm,
But the scary thing is that these beings have materialized as deceased ancestors in times past, and
mhm.
they weren't at all who they appear to be. So if
Right.
you're picking up what I'm putting down, what I'm suggesting is
Yes.
if we can't
Yes.
trust them here, right? Can we
Mm-hmm.
trust them there?
Mm-hmm. But this is what I'm saying. This has surfaced a lot lately.
Yep.
There are people who have had experiences, near death experience, going, something doesn't feel right, and we're so
Yeah.
conditioned to fear the darkness and so
Mhm.
conditioned to go to this gentle light, which is
Mhm.
like
Uh,
my producer said to me one time. He goes, yeah, it's like a birth canal. You just like zip right
yeah.
back in, all your loved ones are there waiting for you. I'm like, oh, you just ruined it for me. You don't want to think
You're
about
born
that.
again.
I need time
Yeah.
off in between there somewhere. But it makes you wonder, though, is
Yeah.
that what it is? Why all of this type of conditioning? I've never feared the darkness,
Right.
ever.
I
But
think that was, the John Lear thing, right? Back in the day with Art Bell when he
yeah,
mentioned that, like,
yeah.
don't go into the light, Art.
Don't go to the
Um,
light. No.
yeah. It's like, wait a minute, we can't even trust that now.
I
But
know. I
that's where
know.
we are. All of this does point to at least the species I've been researching. It does speak to this being a construct,
Yes.
and that whatever we're dealing with is outside of the construct.
Hmm.
I don't know if I've told you the story about the near death experience, or at least the person who had an NDE
Hmm.
that I spoke to years ago, where she had suffered, brain damage, really bad brain damage. She had to crack her head open like this. It's really bad. Anyways, she was an EMT, I think, and she hit a patch of black ice on the highway. It ejected her from the vehicle, and it was all bad. But she said, I wake up. She's like, not in this dimension, in the afterlife, and it's my dad who's dead. And the dad is looking at her and he's like, well, what are you doing here? It's not your time yet. Right. The same story. And she tells him what happened. And she's like, listen, she's like, my body is really badly injured. I don't know if I'm going to survive this. He goes, oh, you're going to survive it because it's not your time. And she's like, well, I don't want to go back, Dad. And he goes, you have to. You have to be there for your boys. She said, Nathaniel, she said, I didn't have my twins for another decade. So this is a construct.
See, it just every time we come on a stupid show, you leave me like with more questions, and we have to keep going out. We have to keep going after
Oh
that.
no, right?
I know. It's terrible. Terrible. You're
Just
just
the amount of
stretching my
research.
brain. No, but no.
I was on a show the other day, Michelle. It's hilarious. Okay, I won't, because one of the hosts was like,
I
I
know.
felt so bad, dude. He was just like, all right,
Just like I don't know what to
awesome
do with
guy.
this.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
I was like, man, maybe I'm saying too much here, but
No, I don't think you're ever saying too much. Not on this show, anyway. I always say it's your show. Talk about what you want. Go crazy.
yeah,
Get it out there because that's really what it's about. I like the dialogue, and I like when the wheels start going from every direction, and that's where the best information comes from. You don't have to hold back. Not here anyway. But
yeah.
so, in your opinion, then, if you can't trust them here, you certainly shouldn't trust them over there. So, is there an option if you've been sigiled?
Hmm.
Where do you
I don't know.
go? Where do you go after
I don't
that?
know. I'm leaning towards the soul being a different species than the body it's inhabiting.
Mm,
And to that degree, if we understand abductions through that lens,
mm.
then not everything that's being done to us is being done for us.
So they're marking the body, but not
But
necessarily the essence.
yeah,
But
it
if the
could
marks
be
on the body traps the essence, can
right, right. Or how about this one, my friend? That what they're doing is sigilizing the soul and then putting the soul back into the body, and now you're seeing subdermal scar. Come on, high five, Michelle. Let's go. Let's go. You were like, oh God.
like, wait a minute. Oh,
Right? And
yeah.
we're seeing the secondary consequence of the
Yeah.
sigilized soul.
Mm.
And I think that is the case.
But
In
so,
some
I mean,
case,
it's free, right? Can you
yeah.
really trap energy? You can
Um,
recycle energy, but can
well,
you trap it?
abductions. How many times have we
Yeah.
seen or heard people say, it's out of body, and then they put
Mm.
my soul in a black box, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's weird. It really is weird, but I am like when you're looking at an avatar and then a consciousness possessing it, at least I've always thought that like, oh, I have a body, I have a soul. I always thought that both of those were the same species,
No. I
right?
mean,
And
well,
so
mm,
it's why I did the lecture at the Awakening last year, the species within, where it appears, yeah, that some of these rituals are being performed on the soul,
mhm,
and that it manifests in the body, not unlike Ian Stevenson's work, right?
mhm,
When he talks
mhm.
about people with past lives, they have anyways, fascinating
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, I think it is a sigilized soul in some cases, and they
Mhm.
in fact may be souls. That's a big theme now in the field.
No, that's a big one. Hmm. Question here. How do you make sure a
Mhm.
tattoo isn't a sigil? Like
Um,
sometimes you feel compelled,
yeah,
like, I need to have this tattoo. It's a
oh,
unicorn.
good question. Good
I'm
question.
kidding, but
Yeah,
some of them are pretty intricate.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that would be up to your intent. That's
yeah, yeah.
that's a sigil.
Intention. Yeah.
So I have a tattoo, and it's not a sigil because
Me
I
too.
didn't want it
Yeah.
to be right. Um, but yeah, I've seen people tattoo themselves with sigils and stuff. Again, that's in chaos magic.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, what would we call a species of sorcerers that are doing things to the soul itself?
Magicians,
There we go.
dark magicians.
Adept.
Yeah.
Yep. Dark
Yeah.
gods, essentially, is what
Yeah.
that book said.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, they're out there.
Oh,
I mean, there are many who are self-proclaimed. They don't hide it. They
yeah.
basically just put it out there.
Mhm.
They're good. There are bad. I heard tattoo artists permanently leave their energy on you with the sigils power come from the artist creator. That's interesting.
Mm,
Hi,
it's a
Adrian.
good question. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope not.
Yeah. I know. It's like,
Like, That guy really wanted me to eat chicken wings because I can't help
The gal
myself.
who did my tattoos was like pretty awesome. So it's good
Yeah.
energy, but yeah, okay. Well, here's another one. Kurt, what's your opinion on the evil eye and the eye of Ra? And also people that say amen to praising. Amen, amen, Ra.
No,
Catherine said yes. Yeah.
well, I don't, I've heard that from
Yeah.
people. The linguistics aren't there. It's just literally something that rhymes and then people just connect the two. Like,
Right.
okay, it makes sense.
Yes.
That's why, again, we've got to really be careful with this stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Hmm. Okay. So what's next on the list, next leg of your research with this?
Um, well, I'm going to be mentored by a guy who's written X-Files episodes. He's
That's awesome.
incredible.
I love
Isn't
it.
it amazing, my friend? I was freaking out. I mean, I finally called him. I was like, "Look, here's where I'm at. This is what
Yeah.
I need." Right? He was like, "Yeah, we'll meet once an hour for like, was it once a week or yeah, we'll
Mhm.
meet for an hour." It's like, oh my god, because what I
Mhm.
want to do though is I want um to go out and start doing more in-home investigations.
Mm.
Because there's a specific pathology I'm looking for,
Mhm.
and I have enough data behind me to say, okay, not only do these things exist, when they're present, this is what they leave.
Mhm.
And the work is going to get more intense to where I'm going to be collecting more sigils and be more active with not just researching in literature, but actually interfacing with these cases.
Mhm.
So potentially making a documentary um, about them, which would be awesome. So once
Mhm.
I get necronetics out, um, I'll tell you what, Michelle, there's a lot of people researching this now.
Mm.
A
It's
lot.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I am humbled. I
Mhm.
mean, tons and tons and tons of people from all backgrounds coming in and they're like,
Mhm.
look, they would you would have a pastor talking to an occultist, and they would never, ever talk to each other.
Mhm.
Literally, they're just
Mhm. The research has really helped me better understand what happened to me in my past. Super crazy things. Really grateful.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's what it's about.
Nathaniel making waves. That's what Nathaniel does.
You know what that reminds me of? That Mad TV Ride the Wave.
Red the
Remember?
wave.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, well, who was that guy?
Yeah.
Jim Carrey. What Ride the Wave?
Yeah.
Oh my God. But
But
yeah, it's bringing people together,
mm,
and it's so
yeah.
fascinating to me, because I never intended to do this. I just wanted to be good at my research and at
Mm,
least contribute to the field. But like I said, there are people from all backgrounds who have similar experiences that are willing to say, okay, I think we're studying the same thing.
mhm,
How can we learn more about this specific species? And I'm excited.
mhm. Well, the fact that you've had people write papers on this, like there's serious research,
Yeah.
taking place, everything that led up to this for you wanting to do it and delving into it, it shows that there was some very serious people
Oh yeah.
who's been, finding this sort of thing and talking about this sort of thing.
Well, nobody wants to have the conversation, right? I
Yeah.
think they're coming forward now and saying, okay, there are certain models that are inconsistent with the data set, no matter how much we want them to fit.
Hmm. Yes. Central heater sounds not. Yes.
Oh yeah, that's what that FBI agent said in the press conference was like,
Yes.
look,
Yeah.
we didn't know this kind of malevolence existed.
Hmm.
I mean, it blew my mind. I thought I knew
Hmm.
darkness until I saw that. I was like, oh my God,
Hmm.
horrible.
Yeah. But I mean, when you're getting into, magical practices and self-proclaimed, magicians, um, does it run really, really deep, right into to the upper crust circles,
Yeah.
that I mean, think about it. Look at all of the ancient texts that are out there, perhaps in private libraries, Vatican archives, things that came out of, the ancient libraries of Alexandria, for instance, the hidden library in Tibet or
Hmm.
in Romania. Like these things are starting to surface. They're out there.
Yes.
So there's so much ancient knowledge about this stuff that's out there that certain people and only certain people have access to. on a need to know basis. Apparently, we push marks don't need to know. So,
Oh my God.
so stuff is
Yeah.
going on, but eventually we are in modern times now. We have technology, we have internet, like things are coming out in the open. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how far back have you heard about this sort of thing in your
Oh
research?
my God. Early Iron Age.
Okay, really?
Oh
See,
my God. Yeah. Yeah.
all right.
And a lot of this
Who knew?
is, I know, right? I look so lazy when I slip like that.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna sit up here real quick. Yeah, early Iron Age, and like quite literally, the phenomenon was leading people out into the desert in order to build altars. And in fact, that was one of the earliest translations of Sheol or hell.
Hmm.
Was that they would go out to Sheol out in the desert,
Hmm.
and they would kind of triangulate where they put their altar with where the phenomenon was incarnating. So the
Mhm.
phenomenon again is drawing them
Mhm.
to these locations. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, whatever we're dealing with, it is primeval. And
Mhm.
as other researchers have suggested, this species may be formerly human. In that the reason we don't cannot properly quantify them is because the species of the soul is different than the body they inhabited, and
Mhm.
so they are not just an apparition, not just a ghost,
Mhm.
something much more evolved than that.
Yeah, older. Mm.
Mhm.
It's interesting that it goes back to the Iron Age, that there's actually um information, you know.
Yeah.
Do you find that sort of stuff through what, like hieroglyphs, petroglyphs? Like, how do you even delve that far
Material
back?
culture, archaeology.
Got
One of my
Oh.
favorite archaeologists is oh God, it was James Fraser, Henry Frankfurt.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, these guys. Yeah, like what's fascinating to me is like you see this kind of necronetic or necromantic connection between the phenomenon and
Mhm.
Egyptology.
Mhm.
Someone sent me an email the other day where Egyptologists had uncovered sarcophagi where the mummies had golden tongues
Ooh.
because they believed, right? This gets back into necromancy, right? Where they
Mm.
believed that the phenomenon would use that golden tongue to reanimate the mouth of the ancestor to communicate.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, so that's again the necronetic lens. That's the origin of the implant,
Mhm.
where in antiquity they would carve the name of an unclean spirit, implant that piece of metal underneath the tongue that they just carved into.
Hmm.
And the phenomenon would merge old memory with new matter and reanimate the corpse to communicate with the practitioner.
Hmm.
The
Wow.
implant, so replication by virtue of implantation. And then you start to see the evolution of its pathology, where it did not just self replicate by implantation, but it self replicated by impregnation.
Mhm.
And sometimes both of those are present at the same time, where you, again, getting back to the sigilization and the
Mhm.
secretions.
Mhm.
That's necronetics.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I love it. I found that extremely fascinating, extremely fascinating. Well, man, we're almost at the top of the hour. So tell everybody how to find you. And I've got all of your links, of course, in the show
Okay.
description. And I'm going to put
So
your
I
website.
appreciate it.
Here we go.
You guys can follow me on my YouTube channel if you want to look at all my interviews. I have a playlist there for you.
Mhm.
Also, just follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm at most of the time. So it's real easy.
That's perfect. Website as well. There it
Yep.
is. There
Thank
it
you.
is. Oh, you're very welcome. It has been, as always, a lot of fun and a pleasure,
Thank you.
spending a couple of hours with you. And you are back. You are back on, let me see, June 19th. We have more
Yep.
goodies to talk about.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I know. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank
Yes.
you, my friend. Always a pleasure. Always enjoy myself. And you have a good evening.
And you as well. You as well. Thank you, Nathaniel.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, we are here at the top of the hour, just about, and it was a terrific show. Big shout out to Dolly. Happy birthday, Dolly. Love you so much. Just awesome. One of my Chiquitas. Anyway, next week, guys, Beyond the Outer Realm, Mary Joyce is going to be joining us and talking with the legend of the little people and Bigfoot. Wednesday, very first time, Ben Teata Ingram will be discussing his book, The Mysteries of, I hope I don't butcher this name, Kurupira, the hidden land of unknown creatures, which inspired Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World. I've just finished reading an article, funny enough, before I ended up seeing Ben, um, and a place in the Congo where people were witnessing dinosaurs. What? So, and then all of a sudden you want to talk synchronicities, up comes Ben's book. I'm like, okay, wait now. That's definitely have to get, I need in on this stuff. This is something we have not done here on the Outer Realm. So this is going to be very interesting, to say the least. Thursday, fellow host Sean Kelly, host of Into the Night, is going to be joining us and talking about the high strangeness in one of my favorite states, being Pennsylvania. I love Pennsylvania. It's just so much fun there, so much high strangeness over there. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. So big thank you to our sponsor, Folgers Coffee. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis. Big thank you to Justin Snicker. Big thank you to all of you for tuning in this evening. And we shall see you on Tuesday. Have a fantastic evening, and much love to you all. Have a safe weekend as well. Good night, everyone.